Hello and welcome to another episode of Oh So Curious. And on today's show, we're going to be talking a little bit about how the Marvels just absolutely crashed the box office. 79% drop, it looks like, in the second weekend. We'll be discussing The Hunger Games, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, a very long title. It's making a good amount of money, and Roland's going to tell us what he thought about it. Speaking of which, Roland's back on the show today. And
Yay!
And of course, we have updates about Marvel. There's a lot going on in the world of the MCU. In addition to the Marvels, we've had news about Fantastic Four. Of course, there's some news about the Avengers, Kang Dynasty. Are we actually gonna get a Kang Dynasty? We'll discuss that a little bit. And then there was a new Scott Pilgrim anime that just came out, so we will be talking about that as well. But right now, joining me on today's show, we of course have Angelina in addition to Roland. So Angelina, how are you doing today?
I'm good. It feels like I don't know, it feels great. The strike is finally over. It feels like LA is moving again. All the parts are like getting oiled back up and moving as the machine should. So it's good.
Yeah, no, it's great seeing that, the actors are striking deals, movies are getting back to production. I know you've been busy with a ton of auditions. But speaking of auditions, Roland, how are you doing today?
I'm doing
Speaking of
good.
what?
Yeah.
It's like what?
I was just gonna roll with it. I didn't know what it meant, but I was just
We're
gonna smile and
auditioning
wave.
you. Roland,
Yeah.
this is your audition to be back on the show. Are
Yeah.
you ready?
I guess I'm ready to start again, you know. But no, I'm doing good. Charlotte is kind of coming back on its own now. More plans for 2024 rather than finishing up this year. But it's like good to hear like actually good stuff come through. So very happy with that. And I'm happy to be on the show again. So thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks for being
absolutely.
here.
So before we get into like our main topics for the day, I did want to
Yeah.
mention like the Marvels just broke a record, and not a good record, for the MCU. It
Yeah.
had like a 79% second weekend drop at the box office. It started off at 47 million on its opening weekend, and now it made like 10.5 or something like that in the second weekend. And
Yeah.
now, granted, the Hunger Games movie's out, and that made like 44 million. And then you'd imagine that the Marvels would come in second, but no, it's like in third. Like I think the new Trolls movie came in second. Like it's like, what do you
Yeah.
guys think about the fact that an MCU movie, like unthinkable, even Quantumania started off at 100 million. Like what's going on?
I think that Quantum Mania was like really, I mean, it was for me. I don't know if everybody else was feeling this way, was like the big telltale sign of the giant decline of quality with Marvel. And I think everybody's still kind of like hurt and betrayed in their own way with like different projects that they just, I don't think a lot of people were like looking up to this movie. Like they weren't excited as they should be because they were just kind of like afraid of being hurt, I guess. um I don't know. That's kind of like my opinion on
It's
it. It's
true.
terrible, but Angelina, what do you think?
Yeah, no, and I definitely agree with that. And I think the massive correlation between these two movies and how poorly they have performed is all of the switchover handoffs. We knew that Quantumania was dealing with all sorts of like FX, SFX, what do you even call it? Like all of the CGI
VFX.
stuff, the whole team was so backed up.
Yeah.
And like now they're talking about striking. Like they said there were so many reports that they had to rush all the way through this before this movie was even released. I wasn't Quantumania also, they had actually edited it more after its initial premiere. I'm pretty sure I read something that the movie had done its initial premiere before it was released worldwide, and they actually had to go back and do more edits.
Maybe they did. It wouldn't be the first time because nowadays
Yeah.
movies like they don't deliver physical hard drives or rolls of film to the
Yeah.
theaters. It's like
Yeah.
downloaded off a server, so you can just make an update. I know they did something like that for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse because there was
Yeah.
an issue with the sound mix and people were complaining. And like a week into release, Sony went in and made some adjustments, and then people were like, "Oh, it's fine now." So
Well, they
not
also
only
like
that, but they
changed straight up
yeah,
scenes. Like there was like different animations and
different
stuff.
lines of
Yeah.
dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
there was just all of these reports, and I think that's what these two Marvel movies have the most in common with. We were already getting so much news that the director left, they're going back, they're re-editing scenes, they're filming new scenes, they're reshooting this, they're reshooting that, they're mixing it up. And I think all the reports for the Marvels really were saying like this just felt like a hack job in the editing room. And that doesn't make me want to go see this movie, especially when I know Quantumania. Like, I also didn't go see Quantumania, but that was because all of these reports were so bad. And at this point, I was already like exhausted on superhero movies. I don't want to go waste my time watching a bad superhero movie. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I'm burnt out on them. Like, I just can't do it.
Yeah, and I mean, look, the movie itself is pretty good. Like, it's not the best thing ever. Like, I went and saw it a second time, and I honestly had a much better time with it on my second go around. And
The
like
Marvels or Quantumania?
The Marvels. The
Okay.
Marvels. I think Quantumania, like, it's sort of,
Yeah.
it's not even mid. It's like low level.
Terrible.
There's way too much CGI in it, and the fact that they did not have Michael Peña's character, I think, was like a cardinal sin they could not recover from. Like that.
Yeah, there's
that was
no
one of
charm in that movie.
Yeah, like Louis was like he was the best part of the first two movies. Like
Yeah.
they needed him in there.
I get angry thinking about Quantumania, so let's move back on to the Marvels. Honestly,
the Marvels, right? I mean, yeah, like, so the Marvels, like, to me is a movie that probably, and we were talking about this on DCU Daily recently, that I think it's starting to prove that, look, the Marvels is a better movie than something like a Thor: The Dark World or a few other MC movies you may put it above, but it's probably going to make less money than those movies. And that has to do with the fact that I think the overall state of the MCU is affecting the ceiling of this film, because a lot of people are like making a prejudgment before they even watch the movie because they just don't have the faith in the franchise. And I think that's something where Marvel should start looking into the idea of doing maybe their own version of an Elseworlds like set of stories, because they've been used to success this whole time. And so Captain Marvel came out, made $1 billion. I think if that Captain Marvel movie had come out not between the two Avengers movies, I'm not saying it would have made half as much, but it would probably have made less than $1 billion. So it had that bump. And I think now, like, you're starting to see that if your universe is not thriving, not every movie is going to do as well, because it doesn't have that knock-on effect of, oh, it's the MCU, we need to go see this.
Yeah.
And like DC has done with the Batman and Joker, like, your DC could be in like the trash can, but the Batman and Joker made almost $2 billion combined, and they're DC movies. So I think it's a good way to hedge your bets. And hopefully Marvel's learning that lesson, maybe moving forward. But speaking of Marvel, so there was this new anime out on Netflix, and Roland, you were.
I think what you mean is, speaking of Brie Larson, because this is not
literally,
Marvel property.
The transitions today are a little rolling with that. Yeah, speaking of Brie Larson, Roland, you got to see the new Scott Pilgrim anime, and you're not in love with it? You are in love with it?
Okay. So first of all, just a little, if you don't know much about Scott Pilgrim versus the World, it was 7 graphic novels, or 6. They were graphic novels, basically mangas. And in 2010, there was a movie adaptation while they were still finishing the novels, by the way, by my favorite director, Edgar Wright, which is very stylized, very quick, all this stuff.
What else is he known for?
Edgar Wright did Shaun of the Dead, Baby Driver.
Yeah.
He just did Last Night at Soho not too long ago.
I did like that movie.
Yeah. And it had a lot of big name actors then, and it has even more big name actors now. I mean, Michael Cera, Mary Elizabeth Winstead are the main leads. Chris Evans is in it. Jason Schwartzman. Brie Larson, like we said. There's a lot of big names in it, and it's about this guy who falls in love with this girl and has to fight a league of her evil exes. And if you love the movie and you love the manga, give the anime a try. And what the anime is that it's not a remake. It is basically a reimagination where it changes a plot point, so you spend more time with the characters. Like, you learn a lot about who the exes are. You're more invested in the backstory. That's a spoiler-free review.
Did
It
you practice
is.
that? That was good.
Thank you. It is pretty good. With the and it's easy for you to get kind of disillusioned and kind of disheartened at first. I'm keeping it spoiler free just for a second. But the ending kind of falls flat with the message, I believe, and it kind of almost ruins this thing that you're trying to hope for. So that was a spoiler free. Now we're gonna go into spoilers. Here's what I mean. A big part of the movie is fighting. It's the whole movie is a symbol of when you're in a new relationship, you're fighting for that relationship, whether it being like, you know, with the person to gain like a mutual love, or like fighting their past or fighting your own past so that you can grow and be a better person. That's what the movie and the books are about. And you know, he fights all these evil exes, and the first evil ex in this anime, they go to fight, and it seems like the first ex actually kills Scott Pilgrim, the main character, at the end of episode 1. So it's very like invincible, you know, kind of reaction where you're like, what just, I don't think that's supposed to happen. And so you're very, I mean, it's the show is called Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. So you're like, oh yeah, he's going to take off. He's going to boost up like a rocket. No, he takes off. He's not in the show for a good portion of it. I don't want to spoil how many episodes he's not in, but it's very easy for you to get turned off by it because it's the main character. So it was a very bold move by the creators. And you're more focused on Ramona Flowers. And she's actually trying to learn what happens to Scott, and, you know, actually is able to bury the hatchet with a lot of her exes, and just kind of, you get to know all these characters that you love and hate. And it's very like anime style. So it's kind of like quirky humor. That's not like, and when I say quirky, I don't mean like the millennial kind of quirky writing that we're all beginning to hate and ick.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about like they're actual dorks. That's what I mean. But to spoil it even more, there's this big thing in the very finale where it's talking about past mistakes and how people deal with it, and especially the main character Scott. And like basically, instead of, I don't know, accounting for anything that he did, he was literally trying to go back in time and change things rather than do what he could in the present. And this is a big part of Scott Pilgrim because he's a terrible character. That's why you watch Scott Pilgrim, because you can't name a single good person in Scott Pilgrim, like fully good, except for Knives Chow. That's it. They're all at fault because they're all human and they're all young. But it basically just kind of glances over it and says, Scott, you old scoundrel. Yeah, you can be young and dumb and don't learn anything from your future's faults. But Ramona, you keep running away. You need to accept that. And like basically puts all of the pressure on Ramona and not a single thing for Scott, which I found very upsetting and almost kind of ruins the whole series, because this main character that we've been missing, and though he is not the main character anymore, you're basically kind of ruining a character's arc by saying, oh, whatever happens, happens, but having a complete opposite reaction to a different character, like another one of the leads. So yeah, that's my lengthy review.
No, that was good. I kind of went like, I was pretty invested in that review. I was like, I love it. Now I don't like it anymore. I don't know. But overall, the takeaway is like, would you watch it again?
That's a great question. I think I would watch it again after some time. I definitely want to rewatch the Scott Pilgrim versus the World movie, because it's very similar in episode 1. They do some changes to kind of like give you a hint that it's not the same, and basically telling you like, hey, if you want to watch Scott Pilgrim versus the World, go watch that movie, because this is its own thing. And I think I would watch it again because I do love these characters, as horrible as they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I want to watch the movie more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so if you have to compare them, you would take Scott Pilgrim versus the World any day.
Yes. Also, the music's better.
Oh, see,
I'm
that's
just gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it. There's definitely times like where they're literally just kind of like forcing a song, and you're like, I feel like you kind of changed the plot so we could have more songs, but it's not even like the cool music that we're having. Like if you, I can't stress this enough. My ringtone for the past 9 years has been summertime, or no, what is it? It's a Sex Bob Bomb song. I can't even think of it right now because I'm so flustered. But I love the soundtrack for Scott Pilgrim versus the World because it's very indie rock, it's garage, it's this kind of like kind of grunge feeling, but not actual grunge music. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is more kind of pop indie rock. Like there's no real grit. So it was kind of like upsetting. Like it was a very different vibe.
Well, I
One
had
more
a
time.
question.
Sex Bob Omb. Yeah, that's it. That's the name of the song. They also have so much Beck on this
Well, so Beck,
original album.
yeah, so Beck, they hired Beck to make the music for Scott Pilgrim versus the World. It was
Okay,
Beck
heard.
and they got another band to help as well.
So Beechwood Sparks is featured on here. Sex Bob Omb, Black Lips, Broken Social Scene, T-Rex.
Sparks is on this. That's so funny. Edgar
Yeah,
Wright did.
good indie rock
He was
on
the
here.
executive producer of this anime. He didn't direct. He directed the movie, but he didn't direct any of the episodes for this. But he did a documentary on Sparks, that band, a couple years ago.
Oh, okay. Fun.
Yeah, fun little nod.
Yeah. What can you see this on? What is this streaming?
This is a Netflix based anime.
All right.
Did I convince you, or did I?
Look, it kind of
Okay.
sounds fun. Yeah, it sounds like a fun little, like after work, just like I need something stupid to watch.
Yeah, it's something. Yeah, it's something dumb and fun.
Yeah.
Scott Pilgrim versus the
we all
World is
need a
also
little
on
bit of-
Netflix right now.
Yeah.
And what were you
There's
gonna
a lot
say?
of
I'm sorry.
titles leaving Netflix. Have you guys seen it? I watched like Miss Congeniality 2 randomly, and it was like leaving on Friday. I was like,
Oh no!
now I have to watch it.
Yeah. No, I got to be better about that because I'll just put it on my list and I'll be like, I take it for granted. I'm like,
Yeah,
I have all the time in the
we
world to
think
watch
it's
this.
always gonna be there, and then Netflix is like, peace out, suckers.
Well, it probably will be on some other streaming service. So,
Oh, maybe.
I mean, who owns it? I don't know. If unless it's Sony. If it's Sony, then you don't know because Sony's like, pay us
Aren't
money,
they
we'll put it on
trying to
whatever
make
service.
their own?
Well,
Yeah.
Sony doesn't have their own streaming service. So
No, but aren't they trying to make their own?
no, they're not.
There
No,
was
they
reports that
actually.
somebody was trying to make their own.
No, well, I might have. I don't know. It might have been like because Lionsgate has their own. Lionsgate has Stars, and all the
Yeah.
other ones, like have theirs. Like I think Sony actually specifically said they were like, we're never gonna have a streaming service of our own. So everybody else out there, you guys wanna, pay us to put our movies on your streaming service. Like we are more than happy to do the work for you and sell you the rights to whatever. So
I think
like
that's
I
smart.
for example,
love that. Yeah, I wish more people would do that instead of trying to make me subscribe to every single person's.
yeah, like the Spider-Man movies, like they were on Netflix, like the Marvel Spider-Man movies, the
Yeah.
Tom Holland. And like so Sony sold like a certain period of rights after the movie comes out to Netflix. And then after the period with Netflix ends, there's another pay window, and that window they sold to Disney Plus. So now like those movies are on Disney Plus, but they were on Netflix. Then eventually, I guess, I don't know, they'll settle somewhere. But usually they start off on Stars. So like it's a whole thing. Like Sony makes money like 4 or 5 times over, which is great. But
the
you know,
Sony movie.
I was gonna say this Scott Pilgrim anime has like a 77% audience score. Do you think that's too low? Like, because anything below an 80 usually starts to become a little concerning that maybe people aren't liking it as much as you'd want them to.
I'm not too worried about it because Scott Pilgrim, it's another one of those like cult things, and it just came out. I think there's still time to bump up that ratings. But I mean, if I had to rate it, I think that's probably what I would rate it. Like it's really good and it's fun, but there's some very key things that I probably would have changed.
Okay.
Still good.
Well, It looks like
Okay.
you're recommending it. So whoever's watching this review, if you guys,
Yeah.
certainly if you watch the first movie, then it looks like this is gonna be up your alley, although with a few
Yeah.
caveats.
Definitely not
So-
hating it, just kind of like a forewarning. I think
Okay.
that's what I'm giving it. Yeah.
That's fair. That's
Yeah,
fair.
no, totally.
So-
I kind of, yeah, I definitely want to watch it. I feel like sometimes you just need that. However, Roland, you went to go see another one of the movies that we failed to watch, but I did a lot of research, guys. I swear. I
It's true.
did all of the research.
Yeah.
I was supposed to go see it last night. I literally went to sleep at 8:30 like a grandmother. We're
Yeah.
supposed to wake up at 6:45 a.m. I slept until like 8:10. I woke up like in a fog. I slept for 12 hours. I was like, holy cow. But
Yeah.
it was much needed.
Tiny
But
little
we
coma.
went to go see the new Hunger Games movie, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
And snakes. Yes, I did.
Oh, it's the longest title, but you said it was necessary.
I
I thought
think
it was longer than that. There's no.
No, it's wait, is it?
I think
No,
you're
I don't
missing a
think
few
so.
does.
Hunger
There's like
Games.
the Hunger Games, the
The
Ballad,
Ballad of
Songbirds,
Songbirds and
yeah.
Snakes.
Yeah.
It's a long name.
Not crazy.
It's a long name, but I think they have to put the Hunger Games in just for like branding to just be like, hey, in case you forget.
Well, because it is a part of the Hunger Games.
You know what it is?
That universe, yeah.
I blame Disney for this, right? Because it started with Marvel, like putting Marvel on everything. Like Marvel's the Avengers, not the Avengers from the 90s. No, Marvel's the Avengers from 2012.
Yeah.
And then they started, because they've always stuck their logo like Disney's Frozen. And then, of course, Disney, Pixar, whatever. But then, like, you got to like Star Wars, and they were like, oh, Star Wars Rogue One? No, Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And then when it, like, now all these other studios are like, I wonder what we're going to call any movie that's set in the Harry Potter franchise, the Wizarding World. Oh, like, you know, some dude came up with a clever idea. So like here, now we end up with like a 2-paragraph long title where you have to stick the Hunger Games, because that's, I'm just like, it's not a perfect solution, but I just wish the titles were shorter. Like,
regardless, ballads, the Ballad of Songbirds and Snake, that's a long enough title. It's definitely a mouthful. Yeah, actually, this is totally unrelated, but I was talking to a friend about movie titles, and I was like sharing him a script, and I had this like this is a fake name. I said Fear and Loathing of a Pale Horse, and he was like, that's a terrible name. And I was like, I've had that name for 8 years. You're breaking my heart right now. He was like, 2 words, just bring it to 2 words, 3 tops, move on with your life. And I was like, you know what? That's actually pretty solid advice, because you have to think about, you're always writing in articles, you know, it's going to be constantly mentioned. So you might as well just say like 2 words and then do like the year, you know, it's just easier marketing. I'm losing you guys, I can tell. So I'm just going to start talking about the movie.
No. I agree. But I do think that in marketing wise, like it gets straight to the point. Like you read Hunger Games and you're like, oh, what is this? And then you see that and you're like, oh, wait, what is this? Oh, it's that book. It's the prequel. It's like, you know what I mean? I think
it's definitely a marketing thing.
Yeah. And I think at doing marketing, because I do social media marketing for companies, you immediately see it and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. And the general population just doesn't ask as many questions as you guys do, or any of us really, and they need something that's directly to the point, and then they're like, yeah, like they don't want to think about it, they don't want to read about it to see whether or not they want to go see the movie, they just want to see it.
No questions.
But
yeah, my kids read that book, we'll take them, it's fine. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those.
I agree.
I mean, we can all agree though, there's some bad examples of that though out there. With
how was the movie,
like Batman v Superman, like Dawn of Justice.
It just keeps going on. Dan is like, we must talk about all of the bad movie titles we have ever seen. I can't stand it.
It's like a thing with me. I'm like, why do they have to do like Thor, The Dark World, or Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom? Why can't they just be like Man of Steel or Batman, like 1989? They kept it simple. You know, they just
because they didn't have. Actually, I'm going to back up Angelina on this one.
Titles
because
were already taken.
Yeah, because they had, you can't just do Thor 4.
That's fucking lame.
Yeah, they actually probably could have
No,
done that. That would have been
they
fun.
should have just made okay. So instead of calling it Thor Ragnarok, maybe they should have just called it Ragnarok. That would have been fun.
Yeah, but
Then
then how would you know
how
it's
am
a
I gonna
Thor
know?
movie?
Exactly.
No,
How would they know?
I have a solution
You're
for that.
never gonna know.
They have a solution. So they should have called it Ragnarok, Thor story.
Ew. Ew. That title makes me want to
now I'm
gag.
undercutting my own point. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thor.
I mean, I was gonna say like maybe you could
Ragnarok.
like
2 words to the point,
Yeah.
ready to go.
Or can you
maybe
imagine?
you could do like
Thor story makes me want to vomit.
But can you imagine
Yeah.
how curious you would be if you, instead of going to see Thor: Love and Thunder, you were just going to see Love and Thunder? Like that just changes the
I don't think
vibe
I'd sign
of
up
what
to
that
go
movie.
see that movie. I don't know if that
That's-
movie is marketed as child friendly. I'm not sure.
also kind of false
It's a different
advertising if you think about it, because you're like, well,
Yeah. Because immediately when I think of that title just on its own, I think of the
Yeah.
song Love Shack and the fact that I should not have been singing that on karaoke at 8 years old. That's like what I think of.
Good point. Good point. Anyway, sorry. I'm gonna stop going on these tangents about movie
It's-
titles.
that's all good.
Um,
That's all good.
We'll work on the
So
marketing for your first movie, Dan.
Yeah.
We'll have your we might not have your back. We might actually fight about the movie titles because I wasn't really in love with yours. But
Well, I think
we'll help with revisions.
yeah,
but like regardless,
Precisely.
like the one thing we can agree on is the title of this particular movie, The
It's a
Hunger
little long.
Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, is entirely too long. Because
Yeah.
like, you go into the movie theater and you see the marquee. I guarantee you almost no marquee unless it's like one of those TV things.
I would
has the
literally
whole
walk
name
up
on
and just say, "I want to see the new Hunger Games movie."
Yeah.
Nailed it. There you go. But like
Yep.
you can shorten that on your own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Fair
this movie, guys.
How was
Uh,
the movie? I did a lot of reading on it,
Yeah.
and I just want to say a lot of people, and truly, I did so much reading on it that I wish I just would have gone to see the movie last night instead of sleeping for 12 hours because they're saying that this movie is so like the book that it's almost too much like the book. They
Yeah.
changed very little, which always makes me super excited. And I always like geek out when people give like a true adaptation of a book.
Yeah.
So how did you feel about President Snow's what I guess his
Yeah.
prequel?
Well, you're kind of hinting at the plot synopsis. So what this movie is, it's a prequel of the Hunger Game movies where we actually see President Snow as a youth, as a Ute. And it's mainly based during the 10th annual Hunger Games, where we see him try to be a mentor for tribute. And non-spoiler review, watched it. I didn't read the book, sadly. I would have loved to, but I didn't have the time, or I didn't make the time. That's a better way of putting it.
You made more time than we did.
Yeah, I didn't want to say anything. But I actually really got a kick out of it. I love the Hunger Games movies. When they originally came out, it was my demographic, you know. It was targeted for us Gen Zers. And I remember actually being in theater for the first Hunger Games and like just being totally amazed and loved. And I used to like read the trilogy every time a movie came out, one of the new ones came out. And I was like so invested with finding out more about President Snow because, you know, he's this old evil snake-like guy, and which is kind of half of the name for Songbird and Snake. And you learn about him, you see a few years before there even is a Hunger Games, you know, when there's this war that's ravaging Pan Am, the country. And then you just kind of like cut forward and you see him, and he is this insanely bright man. And you think that he is doing everything for the best interest and finding the best of both worlds. And the more and more he goes, the more he is put into positions where he has to make split decisions. And basically the world around him forcing him to make harder and harder decisions. And even though you know how he ends up, you just can't help but try to root and try to hope that he picks the best and like moral decision. And especially when it comes to his tribute, which is Lucy Gray, I think is her name. And you see her and you're getting invested with her, and you're kind of almost feeling the same things that you're feeling with him, where you're like, you want to know how they get out of this life-threatening situation. But you come to the end, and you honestly need to rewatch the movie, because it gives it a total different context of not only the Hunger Games movies, but the movie that you just watched. And you're just kind of like, wow, I definitely understand a lot more about these characters now in this world. And I just got a real kick out of it. It was very interesting to see the man that he becomes. That's non-spoiler. I don't think I spoiled anything in that.
Okay, but my question is going to force a slight spoiler.
Oh yeah, we can get into spoilers. I did a good enough amount, so.
Sorry guys, spoiler time. If you don't want to hear anything, you can leave now. I'm kidding. Don't ever leave us. But like,
just fast forward.
Just block your ears.
Yeah.
Okay, so based off of all of the reading I did, apparently there's hints that Katniss Everdeen might be related to Maude, who is one of Lucy Gray's like people in the cubby. But apparently in the movie, they don't go into that as much as they do in the book. Is that even sort of hinted at?
There is the only mention of Katniss or anything that's close is she's like picking up this like onion type thing, and she's like, oh yeah, this is what it's called, but I prefer the name Katniss. It's so much prettier. And he has like a little face, which is kind of a cheesy moment. But I know there's a lot of fan theories going on that even Lucy Gray herself could potentially be some sort of relative to Katniss, like with the singing and the theatrics. Nothing about Maude. I don't even think I remember which one Maude was in the covey, which was like, the covey is, they're like singer dancers, travelers, they're nomads. They don't really stay in any districts, but they're just kind of forced to under the conditions.
Okay.
And
then my next question is, based off of all of the reading and everything like that, it seems like Snow, which I can't even pronounce. How do you pronounce his first name?
Cornelius? It's not Cornelius. It's like Cornelius.
Yeah. So we're just going to call him Snow for this.
Boy.
The dude.
Yeah.
It seems like he falls in love with Lucy Gray.
So, yes. And this is a very central part of the story where, he is her mentor. It's like a one-on-one thing. And there's this prize thing for her mentors where like whoever has the most successful tribute wins this prize. And Snow is a very insanely poor character. His family was very rich and lost it all during the war, and is like, he's an orphan, all this stuff like that. So he's making the best grades and wants the best for whatever family has left, its cousin and his grandma, and really wants this money and this award. And basically they're saying like, whoever has the best tribute. And he sees this woman, and there's this kind of moment, this spark in his eye where you can't tell if there's this connection, or he's like, oh my gosh, okay, this is going to be a great opportunity for me. And that's it. That kind of follows for the rest of the movie, where there's like these moments that you can easily either give subtext that this is a love connection, or one of these people is using the other, depending on who you're looking at. And it's this this very kind of interesting dynamic that goes on through. And of course, as the audience, you're going in your head being like, no, they love each other. But you don't know that. There's no way for you to know that. And big spoiler in the movie, Snow cheats in the game actually gives her a weapon
Save her.
and like they does something else that cheats, and he's actually like kind of banned from the capital. They basically forced him to go to District 12 to be a peacekeeper, or District 8, and then he finds a way to be stationed in District 12. And so he basically loses everything. And so it's now you're finally saying like, okay, that whole aspect is gone. Lucy Gray has won. She is a victor. Like, so now it's these two characters. They're in a different type of situation, but they need to trust each other on a whole different circumstance.
Yeah.
And it goes further and further until you come to the climax of the film, where it honestly shocked me. I didn't really understand it at first, where Snow kills somebody, kills a very important person in the community, and has to like basically snitch on his friend who he knows is going to die, and lets like another person die so that they couldn't be witnesses to his actions. And him and Lucy Gray decide to leave, and he like makes a comment, like Lucy Gray makes a comment about like kills, and then he says like, oh, I totally understand, I've killed 3 people. And she was like, I only know of 2. And that's a very big point, because that's when you have to redefine the dynamic of what's going on, of is the truth that he's telling her the whole truth? Because he gives this like explanation of like, oh, I had to kill my old self. And I don't do you want
he
me
basically pulled a Kylo Ren in the middle there.
I don't watch Star Wars, I don't know.
Never mind.
You've never watched Star Wars?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Is that a thing?
I watched New Hope and the first one of the new trilogy, and like some Revenge of no. Where's the one where Anakin?
Revenge of the Sith. Yeah.
Is that the one where it's where Anakin Skywalker
where...
like loses his limbs?
Yeah, that's Revenge of the Sith.
Is that Revenge of the Sith?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, just the fact you said A New Hope instead of Star Wars, like the original Star Wars, I think there's a lot of fans who are like, yeah,
I know of it. I was a very hipster child. It was too mainstream. I was like, I'm not going to watch this because you're telling me to watch it.
Well, no, that's fair. But like, based on what you just described, I actually now I'm intrigued, because it feels like there's a lot of subtext to this story. Especially,
yeah, there was a really
really
interesting dynamic that I got a kick out of. And I'm not trying to, because I know you guys want to watch it, so I'm trying not to spoil completely everything. But it's very interesting. I'm gonna leave it at that. I don't want to share any more, but do you have any other questions about the movie?
So those were mainly my 2, because it really doesn't seem like, I read like full synopsis based off of what I could, and it was like, it's very much, they just changed like certain things from the book to the movie. And then it was, my very first question was really like, does he love her? It looks like he loves her, but I don't know if he loves her, but it sounds like that's like the whole focal point of the movie.
It also looks like he loves her. I will say that. I took it as, no, you know what? I know that he loves her in his way.
His way.
Because you got to remember, this guy's an orphan. He's had to fight his entire life. He was raised during a war. So his version of love is not this very romantic and very like easy communication type thing. It's something where you risk a lot for, and being willing to risk a lot for.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the love that he showed. But there was just like, no, I don't want to spoil anymore.
Okay. No, I'm excited. I want to go see it. Let's talk about the critic reviews are kind of, they're at like 62%, but the audience score is really high, 91%. So people are loving this movie. critics are like, why does this movie exist? It just feels like they need to make a new movie. But with that being said, like, there is a book. You know, I feel like you could argue that about the last, 4 seasons of so many shows that like started off based off of a book and then just like went off on the handle. This is based off of a book. I don't know why critics are like, I don't know why they need this movie. Like,
can I ask what were some things that they changed from the book in the movie? Fun facts for those.
Let me find that for you guys. It was one of my girls at Cosmopolitan wrote this article. Not that you.
By the way, can I ask a question? Like, did this movie feel too long? Because that's some of the feedback I've gotten from people who have seen it. Is like they could have shaved off 20-30 minutes off this film because because for 2.5 hours long, it could have been shorter. Like, did you feel that, like the pacing?
I actually didn't feel that. And I mean, I have been known to say that about movies. I mean, you know, Dan and I had a very big rant about the Batman movie where we talked about that. But for this, I felt like at every new angle, they cut it into 3 parts. You see that there's a big
like chapter
where they say like chapter part 1, and there was always some sort of stake that you were kind of seeing for the first time. So I was completely intrigued through the whole thing.
That's good because a lot of people who I've like looked at their reviews, they said like this movie sort of starts out establishing the premise and like who this Coriolanus character is at the beginning of the movie and what the world of the Hunger Games Panem, which sidebar, every time they said Panem, like Pan Am, the airline, that flashes before my eyes. That's just probably just a me thing because I'm not that familiar with the franchise. But nonetheless, it feels like a lot of people who I'm referring to their reviews, they who thought the pacing was off, they point to the idea that you establish the character, you kind of establish the premise of this movie and where the character dynamics are, but then they sort of skip a lot of the he became this evil person part, and we sort of like rush through that character arc. Did you feel that at all, like during the movie, or do you feel like they gave Snow's character plenty of screen time and plenty of time to develop as a kid? Like you saw that development on screen, or do you feel like some of that happened off screen? Like a bad comparison might be the Mortal Kombat movie that came out recently, where they all of a sudden go from the first act to seemingly the third act because like the final battle comes out of nowhere. Like I've seen movies like that which sort of like skip a whole act. Like, did it feel like that at all?
It's kind of surprising to me that people were saying that. No, I thought it completely made sense because you do see him. He's never completely good. Like you see him at the beginning and you can always make some sort of argument of saying like, oh, well, he's just doing that because of this. But you can perceive him as good. But it was like I was saying earlier, he is constantly forced into these situations where it's forcing him to make more extreme and hardened measures. And his relationship with Lucy Gray is kind of the final straw for him that you'll see. It's something that he has sacrificed everything for, and it's not what he expected. And that's basically what it is. It's just he's trying. He's such a smart character, and you see this, you can do it with the context of like, oh, he has the best grades in class, but no, you see him make very quick decisions, and it's just kind of like that quick thinking that keeps him alive for so much longer, which forces him to be more harder as a character. And Angelina, were you able to find any?
Yeah. So they list like 5 main points, and one of them is actually Mode is you don't really get to like meet her. Like they feature her. I think they say they like mention her name, but in the book you actually get to look at Mode Ivory, who is one of Lucy Gray's siblings. And overall, like you introduce her, but in the book, I guess there's a hint that Maud Ivory and there is a connection to Katniss and Primrose Everdeen. So you don't get that in the movie, but you get that in the book. So I guess that's one of the main things for like the book lovers. But there's also like a few other things. And it seems like the biggest difference is that in the book, this was actually the first Hunger Games where the drones were able to be sent in to give stuff to the tributes. Whereas in the movie, they make this more of a plot point, and the brand new drones are faulty, prone to crash, and like cause a bunch of issues.
Yeah, that's true.
So that was added for the movie and has nothing to do with the book, because in the book, like, they're able to get food and water to the tributes.
Oh.
Whereas in this, Coriolanus weaponizes the chaotic drones to his advantage in order to help save Lucy. So I'm interested to know, like, how, if this is like one of the efforts to save Lucy Gray, how that differs, but they don't state that. So now I just have to read the book and watch the movie.
I guess. What other choice do you have?
And then I guess another one of the small, and this to me is small. They just say that in the book, you actually get to see Clemencia and how, like, she gets caught cheating on her homework, and Gowl, how do you pronounce her name? Dr. Gowl?
Gaul.
Not sure.
Punishes Coriolanus.
I don't even remember.
So yeah, there's like small little different details that get like either way over dramatized for the movie points, or other points in which I'm wondering if they're going to hint at it in a sequel. I feel like maybe they omitted some of these things for a reason.
Yeah.
Like in the book, Lucy Gray was also at the hanging tree. In the movie, she wasn't. So I feel like they are taking these little small details as like little threads to build a sequel to this.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there's going to be a sequel? Do you feel like it was set up for a sequel?
I know that there's rumors that there's going to be a sequel. I don't find any purpose in it. And that's somebody that loves the books and the movies. I didn't realize that I love the movies as much as I did, but I think it's also because I'm an older person. Because I saw that. You're right. I'm
relatively speaking. Yeah,
I'm a young man, but when I watched this, I'm 23.
Oh my God, you're a baby.
There it is.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
We talked about this before.
I can probably find
I kind of forgot.
of,
You
like,
kept
exactly
referencing how young you were, and I'm like, are you really that young? Like, Roland, you have a full-on beard. What's happening here?
I know. What are you gonna do?
Okay.
Well, because when I watched this, I was when did the first Hunger Games come out? 2011?
Gosh, I was in middle school, so you had to have been either like fifth grade.
Wait, how old are you?
I'm 26. I'll be 27 in a couple months.
Yeah, you are.
So I'm only a little bit older than you. That's why, like, you know what I mean? Like I think one of them came out when I was in middle school, and the other two came out when I was in high school.
Love how we're just drop casting this,
Yeah, and then I read all the books my freshman year of high school. So I do want to say that, like, the first movie came out, I read all of the books, and then the second and the third movie came out.
Yeah, so probably like 2011 it came out.
I
the
love
first
how
one.
Literally look up this information for you all, but like
I think Dan's
no,
doing
I think it is. It is.
Oh, you didn't look it up.
Because the second one came out in 2013, the third one in 14, the fourth in 2015.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I was in middle school.
Yeah.
So you had to have been in like 5th grade or 6th grade when the first movie came out.
Yeah, I had friends that were background in that movie because they filmed it in North Carolina.
That's so funny. I didn't know.
But no, what I'm trying to get at is that when you're watching it at that young age, the target audience, you're like, oh yeah, this is intense. Like, I would have to fight in this and blah blah blah. You're not really coming to terms with it because it's like to be chosen, it's like 12 to 18.
Yeah.
That's the age group. And so you're reading that at like 12 and being like, oh wow, an 18-year-old, that's a real grown up. That's pretty intense. And then you're like watching it like way in the future, and you're like, oh my gosh, I to cry. These are actual children that are having to kill themselves. You know, it's just watching Lord of the Flies, but it's such a compact version of it, and just at a more brutal stake. It's terrifying. I hate it, but I loved it at the same time.
I definitely want. I think I forgot how much I loved these books and movies.
I know.
I was a big J-Law fan. I still am, but like this
Yeah.
really was like this series was so huge when we were younger, and I would still say that it was still very much geared towards our age group, although technically I am not a Gen Z. I am technically the very last year of millennial, like the very last year. So,
26 to 27, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's definitely like in that core, they were definitely gearing that towards all of us. I love the books, and now I definitely want to go read this book. I'm literally gonna like order it on Amazon.
Yeah. But it was just one of those things where it's targeted to that, but it never speaks down to that, you know, to that age.
Absolutely. I think the author did such a great job. And they were also sort of like looking at this movie and saying the reason why they think it was such a clear adaptation of the book rather than the original Hunger Games series is simply just because the original Hunger Games series was all written from Katniss Everdeen's first person.
Yeah.
It was all from her, like you just get her perception of what's happening. But in a movie world, you can't really do that. So you see that all the time when they have to like repivot and shift the storylines, because obviously your perception of how the world is not how the world is, right?
Yeah.
It's not just you specifically, Roland, any of us, but and so it's like a bigger thing, whereas this was written from the third person, so it was easier just to move over to a script to be filmed. So they also say that this is like the truest adaptation of the books thus far, and that's a big part of the reason they credited that to just being how the book was written, which is also, you know, I'm wondering if in the future that'll even change how some books are to be written. You know, like I'm wondering if we'll get less books from the first person view because it's not as open to adaptation or interpretation.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think, it will probably depend on, again, like what you're looking to do with the book, because nowadays Hollywood is just IP hungry. So they're always after not movies, but like that's the end goal. But like they're after books, comics, anything that is a pre-existing audience that they can, you know, adapt into a movie or a TV show. And not every book translates well into the visual medium. Like I think Foundation as a franchise took decades. Like other franchises that have riffed on with the concept from Foundation, like Star Wars, have come and become absolute, you know, groundbreaking phenomenons. But it took until like a few years ago that they finally put it on screen with Apple TV Plus, making a show out of it. So I think the Hunger Games, the good thing about the Hunger Games is so far this movie is doing well enough at the box office that I think it might spawn a sequel. I don't know what story they would cover. I personally am most interested in the war that they show up at the beginning of this movie. I'm like, take me back to that time, because I think but that's just my preference. But there's so much time between where this movie takes place and Katniss Everdeen's story that I bet you can explore any of that, or maybe even move beyond Katniss's story and go.
There's also, I mean, Catching Fire was really the big one, because that was they're all the returning victors, and you see all of these like returning people. And honestly, I know everybody wanted like a Finnick Odair, which is one of the characters. They really wanted a spin-off movie of that, finding out about how he won.
Mm-hmm.
There's always an opportunity. There's always something. I don't think
surprised none of that happened. Like after the initial series,
I think like Lionsgate as a studio probably didn't know what to do with the franchise. Like these ideas would probably be coming up from people who are fans of the franchise. I don't know if they really had anybody to kind of shepherd this along beyond the movies that they already created. And that's one thing where I think studios are starting to realize you don't maybe need somebody who's exactly like Kevin Feige to shepherd your franchise IP, but you need somebody who knows that IP well enough to do a good job with that. I think that's why, you know, those Marvel and DC properties have that person. Even Star Trek or even Star Wars, they all have people who literally are in charge of shepherding the franchise, coming up with these ideas, making sure what works, what doesn't work, beyond just green lighting a book adaptation. Because I think that alone doesn't have.
Yeah, and I think in some ways that's good. Some ways they take it too far. Like that's how we've experienced the sort of like superhero burnout. I felt like there were like way too many Star Wars movies that came out all in a very short amount of time. But I do feel like there was a 10-year gap, or I guess not quite 10 years, 8 years, but 8 years of no Hunger Games movies to all of a sudden like revamp the franchise was like, oh, like I'm very excited for it because we waited this long, but it just feels like a length of time that I feel like they might have missed out on other opportunities. Like now I don't think the actors that were in the original series could play younger versions to do like prequels and storylines because they would have to recast them. You know what I mean?
I think that was all.
The age.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it was honestly kind of smart of them because, during that time we were going through a really big, YA dystopia boom. There was Divergent. There was, all these different franchises.
So sad about those movies. Those movies were so
that
bad.
franchise totally crashed. Remember they were supposed to make a part
bad.
2? Like
the books had me in legitimate tears. The books like moved me. I cried a whole evening upon reading the end of the last book.
Yeah, but exactly, there was
so bad.
Yeah, there was this huge boom, and we had all these movies. Almost, I mean, you could honestly even kind of make it on a very small scale with the superhero movies, and we've kind of been over it. I can't really think of one in the past like few years where it was like kind of franchise building for young adults. So it was kind of like a good almost like a little nostalgia shot where it was like, hey, we know this book is out here. We gave it some time. Here it is. Where you've had time to be able to breathe. So I thought it was kind of a good idea.
Yeah.
And it's probably a bad idea because there's going to be more, but
Yeah, totally.
It definitely, I think, versus what they did with Fantastic Beasts, where I think they said, let's make this other movie. And then they were like, we can't really turn this into like a franchise unto itself. So let's bring in all these other Harry Potter characters like Dumbledore. And then they sort of stumbled into a mess. And I think on the flip side of that, definitely, I think waiting out the young adult like genre sort of crashing and burning maybe has helped maybe give this franchise new life. So who knows? We'll see where it goes. Guys, let us know in the comments below what you thought about this movie. It's a very long title. I think we can all agree on that. But and the movie might be a little long, or it may not be long. I mean, Roland said that it was a perfect, pacing and things didn't feel out of place. But let us know in the comments what you thought about the movie. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Are you gonna go see it again, or did you even go see it the first time? I mean, is this something where you're like, the Hunger Games franchise should be done, bury it, let it go, all that stuff? Or are you looking forward to sequels to this? Let us know in the comments. So right now let's move over to what are we going to talk about next? We're going to be talking about DCU Daily. All right. Earlier on, I had a bit of a blooper. I started off the show by calling it DCU Daily, but now I can say that, and it will not be true. It will be true. Never mind. I'm really screwing this up even further. So on today's episode of DCU Daily, we had to talk about Supergirl, the Woman of Tomorrow, it's a new movie that's going to be set in the new DCU. We don't know when this movie is going to come out yet. However, we just got some news that they have signed on a writer who, it doesn't look like she signed on recently. It looks like she submitted a script. James Gunn really loved it. And now he finally made it public and let the world know that we've got a new writer on board the film. The tricky part about this, however, is that when you look up like her writing credits, like she's got a resume as an actress and she's done quite a few things, but she hasn't really written anything before, like beyond like maybe a short film. So I personally am concerned about that.
True. So she did write that off-Broadway play, but when I tried to look up reviews for that play, there were none to be seen, read, viewed. Nobody said nothing about the play. It was just off Broadway. It never made it on Broadway, but she did write this play that did go on to have an off-Broadway run. So that is not nothing. You know what I mean? I have to give her that credit. But yeah, to your point, Dan, I don't even remember her in the Vampire Diaries, and I definitely watched the majority of that show. I think I fell off the last 2 seasons. So unless she's in the last 2 seasons, I don't remember her face. Apparently she was in the Blacklist. She was in one other show, but I don't know who she is. But now,
I mean,
she's writing.
She looks familiar. That's for sure.
I don't think she does, but I don't know.
Well, I feel like I've seen her in a couple of things before, but like, the biggest thing about this story for me is they're bringing in somebody who does not have a lot of experience writing for a studio film. And recently we have seen that kind of like go sideways in other superhero movies. Like the writer of Ant-Man and Quantumania wasn't really coming in with a ton of experience in feature-length movies, because it's one thing to bring in somebody who's written a lot of television, and I think sometimes it works out. Like Matt Shakman, who's going to be directing Fantastic Four, has done a lot of TV and a lot of like, you know, recent, I think he even directed some of the recent Star Wars and MCU shows. So now he's working on a movie. I think that works out. I think that's fine. But especially when you're familiar with the franchise. But like this person not only has not worked in DC before, she's really not worked in any kind of, you know, feature length production before. It's completely different to write a short film to writing a feature film, and not just a feature film, but like a studio feature film.
Well, yeah, because you have to build out plot lines to last not one film, but generally 2 or 3. You have to like tie in details. There's a bigger, broader arc. There are certain like literal, like there are literal classes and schooling devoted to like how to write scripts for a feature film and a short film, stunts, all of that on so many levels. So yes, this is a way different, I mean, completely new ball game. So that is a little concerning. But as you said, like we have to trust that James Gunn knows what he's doing. And he is sort of like spearheading this whole thing. If he read this script, which is, so Anna Noguera, is that how we pronounce her last name?
Noguera, I think.
Noguera. Anna Noguera is the new writer. She's, you know, she's been announced for Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. And it's supposed to, you know, center on Superman's cousin, Kara, and her super dog Crypto, which is super cute. But what I did like about, you know, this sort of like release of this script, the sort of info that they released, it's gonna be like a darker Supergirl, like not the Supergirl that we're used to hearing, like the very like feminine superhero girl. It's like a darker storyline, which I am excited for. I feel like Marvel sort of already has that sort of like bright and bubbly superhero wrapped up. Like I want to see DC's like grittier, real side. I think that's what makes DC so good.
Yeah, they're definitely known for that. I think, this is my personal opinion, so there's definitely a lot of factors with this. Has she done any movie acting? Do we know that? Or is it just straight TV acting?
From what I read, no. She was in the Vampire Diaries, the Michael J. Fox show, and the Blacklist, and she's right.
So this is very interesting.
I'm working on another script called Mothers Lock Up Your Daughters, an adaptation book, but it's not out yet. So
this is really interesting to me because she has writing experience, she has acting experience, with various degrees, but nothing with film. And I'm going to be optimistic because you can always be pessimistic. That's super easy. I think this is going to be really intriguing. I think this is really interesting. You know, when you're working on Broadway, you have to be very theatric. You have to be very loud. You have to know your characters. And especially as an actor, you and Angeline, you could probably piggyback off of this, but as an actor, like you really have to be in the mind of a character. And when you're writing, you have to be in the mind of several characters. So I think it's kind of like that thing where, this is a terrible analogy, but when Schwarzenegger was governor, where he had no idea what he was doing and just kind of started doing all of these like radical stuff that like whether it being like good or bad, it was just something that people were not used to. So I think DC is in a very raw area right now where anything can be kind of detrimental to what they're trying to build. So to just kind of go crazy and take a giant gamble like this, I think it's insanely brave, especially of the showrunners
But
for
you know
this
what?
universe. But
That's not to say that they did not take her on as the original scriptwriter and that
yeah,
they're not going to doctor the absolute crap out of this script.
yeah,
I mean, they do that to most lead writers anyway. There's a reason in these movies and in these like
yeah,
all of these universes, they have huge writers' rooms. It's her script initially, but is it really that much of a gamble if they already have the script, they love the script as is, and then they just make a crap ton of changes? You know what I mean?
yeah. I don't know. All I'm saying is I'm a big fan of character studies, and if they're trying to go to a dark side for this usually very light character, I think it would be very interesting. Really, all I care about is that if she knows the Supergirl story, that's
Yeah.
all I care about. I'm just so tired of writers taking like writing jobs and they have no idea what they're doing. They just kind of begin to do all of this research, and it's just kind of like I'm getting paid to do it. You know, there's no real passion. That's kind of all I care about, honestly.
Yeah.
Dan, what do you think?
I look, like I said, I have some concerns about the lack of experience, but like earlier I put this on screen. I'm gonna just go through it again. There's a statement that James Gunn put out on his Threads and his X account where he called, you know, this incredible news, basically announcing to the world officially. That's where basically the story comes from, that Ana Negreira is gonna be now the writer, and she's already kind of written a script for the movie. And he said, "A hearty public welcome to Ana Negreira, to the DC Studios family. Ana is an amazing writer whose screenplay adaptation of Woman of Tomorrow is above and beyond anything I hoped it would be. We are excited to be moving forward on this unique take on Supergirl and this beautiful star-spanning tale." So, look, it's got James Gunn's blessing, and if you trust in James Gunn, then I think let's give this a shot. Like, you know, what's the worst that can happen, right? Like, and also looking at it from a positive standpoint, I think having a first-time writer, like, yes, more times than not, it doesn't work out, but the times that it does, you know, like that's people remember those as great. Like, for example,
Yeah,
this is like the first Saw movie. I mean, I know this is completely different genre and everything, but like those guys like had no real experience working on a feature film before. They
yeah,
made that on pennies on the dollar, and like, you know, so there's all kinds of stories like that. Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like, you look at those guys' resumes before they made that movie, and now they have multiple Oscars on their mantle. So I think we can always, you know, give people a chance and see what they can make with that opportunity. And it's not like she's not worked in Hollywood before. This is in her like first rodeo. So
yeah,
like you said, Angelina, too, I'm sure there will be other people there helping, you know, along, like they have script doctors that don't get credits on movies. I'm sure James Gunn is, like he said, he's taking a look at the script. He thinks it's amazing. So I'm sure that if he had any notes that, you know, then stories and scripts evolve as the movies get made. So guys, let us know in the comments below. What do you think about this news that now Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, finally has a writer attached? And we don't have a director yet, but the fact that we do have a writer, I think that's great news and something to look forward to, because Superman Legacy is coming out in 2025. Before you know it, it will be here. It's going into production next year, so I'm sure we'll be giving you more updates about that. But in the meantime, let us know what you're thinking about this news, and of course, all the other DC news that's coming out each and every day. We're here on DC Daily giving you all the updates to keep checking back here for all that and so much more. So it's been a busy week for the MCU. I mean, the strike with just recently ended. The actors are back to work. Hollywood is back to work, and as a result of that, you know, there's a lot of casting news that's starting to come out. Now, this isn't official, and I'm sure you guys have probably seen this elsewhere. That, and it's been all over the trades. They've all been mentioning over the course of basically the whole week, it seems like, that Pedro Pascal is potentially going to be our Mr. Fantastic, and they keep saying that it's not quite confirmed, but it's basically done, but it's not quite official yet. So just working off that assumption, let's just say that, you know, like unless they have some big issue with scheduling, which they could, because Pedro Pascal is currently working on Gladiator 2, as a result of which The Last of Us might get delayed, a second season might get delayed because apparently Gladiator 2 is taking priority on his schedule. So the last of HBO team has to work around it for Pedro Pascal. So he's a busy person. And that might become an issue because Fantastic Four was originally supposed to go into production in the spring of 2024. And Matt Shackman has said this isn't some speculation. And it was meant to start filming at Pinewood Studios in London. So I wanted to start with that because there's other news beyond just Pedro Pascal and the MCU, but let's just start with Pedro Pascal potentially as Mr. Fantastic. And Angelina, I want to ask you first, what do you think about this casting? Marvel's first family, these characters like literally were like part of Marvel's like first comic series or one of their first comic book series. Human Torch is like the original Marvel character. So now we have Mr. Fantastic, who we have seen a couple of iterations of before on screen. But this is the first one that's going to be connected to the MCU. What do you think about Pedro Pascal as that Mr. Fantastic?
I feel like I have referred to Pedro Pascal as Daddy on the show before. I stand by this. And also, I used to have the biggest crush on Lone Griffith from the like 2005 Fantastic Four rendition, which is still like, I never saw the 2015 movie. So Roland was like making a reference to it before we started the show. And I was just like, I mean, like, I can see Michael B. Jordan, like, of course we need to cast him in any movie, always, ever.
If we can.
If we can. We have all the reasons.
But make it make sense.
Dying. But I had no idea what he was talking about because I had never seen the 2015 last iteration of the Fantastic Four. So I am like tried and true on the Jessica Alba, Chris Evans, Fantastic Four. That's why I was so confused when Chris Evans came back as Captain America, but like it's fine, we've moved past this. But I am here for Pedro Pascal as like Mr. Fantastic. You put one character that I was like had the biggest crush on as a kid, and then like an actor that I just have a crush on now today, and I'm just like, wow, of course they were meant to be together. Of course. I'm here for it. Yeah,
the Invisible Woman. That's just who I've really had a problem with. Like they whitewashed Jessica Alba. They whitewashed her. It's so funny. If you watch those movies and she's so blonde with the blue eye contacts.
Jessica Alba really got whitewashed in like almost all of her movies.
Yeah.
Which is
insane. And it's not like, oh, well, they just want to know that she's And then for some reason, Kate Mara is Michael B. Jordan's sister, which never made any sense. I know she's like supposed to be adopted. That was my problem. I'm just going to keep going, but I'm not going to.
So you had an issue with all of the Fantastic Four renditions.
I think most people have had problems with all the Fantastic Four movies. Yeah. There's always, you can always find something positive about them. I say that about anything.
There are moments. Like there's some sequences, like
of course
flying sequence. Like I think the Silver Surfer had some moments. The first one had some.
Love Doug Jones. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually the latest Fantastic Four movie, I personally thought it was a really good movie up until the third act when it just, I think they ran out of ideas.
Yeah.
But when you look at all the stuff that was going on behind the scenes, maybe it had something to do with the fact that the director who was working on the movie was basically either he kicked himself off, depending on who you believe, or he got fired from the movie like at some point during production. And I think that just completely tanked whatever potential that had. But
yeah, there was really good potential at the beginning. The only thing that I like from that movie is like the very end.
Movie,
the very end.
The worst score. Can I read you the score really quick?
Well, let me say my thought, and then you can tell me the score. But my favorite moment from that movie is that it's at the very end, and they're all hanging out on a railing, and they're like, "What do we call each other, guys?" And the thing is like, "I don't know, but it's fantastic." And Miles Teller is like, "Whoa, what? What do you just say?"
Yeah, that was a very cheesy.
I said it was Fantastic Four. Yes. Hated it.
See, this is where I will give the Marvels credit, because they could have come up with because they teased it the whole movie with Miss Marvel coming up with names for Photon, but they never settled on it, and they never called her Photon the whole movie. And I was like, oh, okay. They actually were self-disciplined in one way, because it's like in Man of Steel, they don't call him Superman until like the third act of the movie, and even then they're not calling him Superman, they're calling him the Superman. So like, it's not a proper noun association. So I think like it's always better when you do it that way rather than like do what they did in Fantastic Four movie. Anyway,
They're like,
call each
we're
other,
gonna
guys.
come up with our own name. Well, I think in most superhero, I feel like usually the hero himself never comes up with a name, right? It's usually like they'll either like say like they're calling you, or you'll see it in the news, like they'll like give like articles in which, why do they always feature newspaper articles in these movies, especially the old ones?
Because you can't name yourself. A nickname that you give yourself doesn't. I tried to go by Naylor in middle school. That didn't go. That didn't work.
They were like,
because I said it, because I started it. But if you have journaling who are paid to make these iconic marketing names, then that's what sticks. Yeah. And then usually they're like something funny or annoying and they try to make a joke about it. But yeah, it's a lot of newspaper. They try to like keep going with the newspapers in recent things. You're right.
And like, who actually reads the newspaper anymore? Like, just show me like a
BuzzFeed article,
like a still of the news at least, or like somebody watching the news on their phone seems more realistic instead of like this really old man on a bus reading a newspaper from 3 days ago that he was somehow able to buy somewhere. Like, I don't even know where you could buy a newspaper anymore.
Yeah, I want to see like some teenager looking on BuzzFeed and it's like, top 10 coolest moments from so and so.
We should be hired for these ideas. That's what I think, Roland.
Or they could just hire young people.
Yeah,
that Naylor nickname is gonna come back to haunt you on the show at some point. You know that, right? Like it's gonna.
Well, do you know what Naylor is? It's just rolling backwards.
Well, it's what spelling are we using here?
Roland.
Yeah, it's just rolling backwards.
Even Dan's face right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to read you guys.
That's not how I would pronounce it, though. That's why I'm confused.
What? How do you pronounce it? And then tell us the ratings of the Fantastic Four, Angelina. How would you pronounce it, Dan?
All right, so it's rolling backwards. I would probably do like what they did with like Namor, like so it would be Naylor, or Nalor.
Naylor.
I mean, I feel like you're trying to force yourself not to have the same pronunciation. Because you just called yourself off.
It would sound better that way.
Naylor? No, I think I'd probably pronounce Naylor.
Yeah. Naylor. Nalor.
I think I would probably change the pronunciation to avoid any confusion on purpose with a different spelling of the name,
Nalor.
Nalor? Yeah. That's weird. No.
That sounds too fancy, and I don't think I like that.
Yeah, it definitely would be Naylor. 1000%.
Well, so how bad was that movie?
Okay, so that movie in total brought in $167.9 million in the box office. It was distributed by 20th Century Studios, just in case you guys didn't know that. And it had a whopping 9% score on Rotten Tomatoes and a 4.3 out of 10 on IMDb. 9%. Yep.
Yeah, I remember that. It was like when the DCEU movies were getting like 13 and 17. Somehow
the audience score of that movie is only 18% out of 100,000 plus. Wow, these people hated this movie, which makes me so sad that Miles Teller was given another chance because he's such a phenomenal actor. And that's how sometimes it's really sad because you see these truly phenomenal actors or these truly phenomenal directors or these truly phenomenal writers that get caught up in these shitty ass projects and they can never escape from like the demise of it. Like they can just never come out of that hole again. Yeah. So it always makes me really happy when people do, because quite frankly, I haven't seen Kate Mara really. I feel like she was in a lot of stuff and then she kind of like died out. Like I haven't seen her in it.
Yeah, she did this like steamy drama with Nick Robinson where she plays like the teacher.
Oh, I did see that on Hulu, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
That was the last thing I saw her in. That was like 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, it looked very similar to like a movie that J-Law did, and I was like, okay, cool. Or like that, there was that Ben Affleck movie from this year.
What was that? Sorry. with 3 people, sometimes it's hard not to talk over each
I
other.
know. It's almost impossible.
Well, anyway, getting back to, I think we completely got away from Pedro Pascal and Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah, stretchy dad.
I think the only potential issue here with him actually signing up for the role officially would have to do with his scheduling, which is a result of the actors and writer strikes just delaying everything. Otherwise, I think they would have probably already finished filming his involvement in Gladiator 2, and they might have already been prepping to do The Last of Us, at which point, because outside of those projects, I don't think he has anything else that's really big that's going on, at least not live action. He might be doing some voice work for some projects. But
Gladiator 2 and
Last
then
of Us.
The Last of Us. Yeah.
Last of Us, right.
Filming that for next year.
Yeah.
So the problem becomes, if they were to stay on schedule to start filming Fantastic Four in the spring of next year, right around the same time as Superman Legacy goes into production, like these movies, they require you to really just be dedicated to being on sound stages for months at a time. And like, it's not like he's working on some indie movie and then he's doing another big movie. Gladiator 2 is a big movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think if they can figure out the scheduling issues potentially, then there's probably not a lot of people out there who would look at Pedro Pascal and say, oh, he's too old to play Mr. Fantastic. Because I think if you're going to make him the smartest man in the MCU, then he can't be like Miles Teller, how old Miles Teller was back when they made that Fantastic Four movie, because you need him. I think you want to introduce the Fantastic Four as an experienced team rather than one that kind of comes together in the modern day.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So yeah, from that perspective, I mean, if they do end up making this casting happen, then it's going to make me all that more excited about what these other characters are going to be. Who are they going to be played by?
Yeah. Pascal also has the wings, which Reed Richards
naturally
has. Yeah, naturally.
Yeah.
You don't even need to worry about like putting that on. Like it's just there.
Hair. Hair's good.
It's good.
Yeah. HMU can sit down. They'll be fine.
Have questions how they're going to announce the oldest MCU family, right? One of the smartest MCU characters, and then say, well, where were they the whole time?
Oh, Quantum
whole universe.
Yeah, I've heard some good theories.
This shit happened. Where were they? They had to be somewhere else.
Yeah, I've heard some good theories. A lot of it being around like quantum kind of being, like actually good quantum rather than Quantumania. But like I think Reed Richards was supposed to be like developing a ship to go into the quantum realm. And so he brings his team for various reasons. And then they go in and then they kind of have like that time shift that Scott Lang does in Endgame or Infinity. Yeah, an Endgame.
An Endgame, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a lot more pronounced. But I've heard that's a theory.
That they just like they were on a different sort of
like they were on a research trip. And then they were having difficulty trying to come back. And when they did, it's like 60 years later.
That is the only
I definitely think that could
explain it. Like they have to explain that in this new movie. They can't just like bring them back and just say, here are new characters, because we all know that those characters have always existed within this universe. Like if they don't do a really good job of that, I will be very mad. Like mad.
Yeah. Also, Ben Grimm is Jewish.
Who?
The Thing.
Ben Grimm. Yep.
Okay.
That's
cool.
I think they haven't changed that before, have they? Like I think that's played into the previous 2 iterations.
I'm just making sure.
Because I don't think they really emphasized it much, but I do believe at least in the 2015 version, I think it was included, because I remember a scene or two. Like what's the hat that
Yamaka?
Yes. Sorry, I think we saw him wearing that in a couple of scenes. So like I was like, they weren't really like it wasn't integrated in any meaningful way into the story, but like definitely I think it was like like that.
They're always there. But this is really important that it's a pronounced thing for you, Roland. Is it pronounced in the comics?
It's not necessarily a pronounced thing, but it is, and this is definitely a weird time to talk about it, but I remember having a conversation with Andrew Frankel about this when we were talking
yeah.
about Moon Knight, and it was just kind of this glossed over thing. And I just know it just should be more pronounced. It shouldn't be just be like, hey, fun fact, and then like moving on.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I was going to mention about like how do you make them fit into the world of the MCU? You can easily just, all the actors that they use for the younger version of like well, not the younger, technically the older version of Tony Stark's dad, like Howard Stark, like so
Yeah.
not played by like Dominic, I'm forgetting his name, but like who played him in the original first the first Avenger, but
Yeah.
like the dad that you see in like the flashbacks and Iron Man movies. And then like you saw that I think was it like you saw an older Peggy Carter and you saw like a younger Hank Pym, and they had that scene where like he breaks his nose. I'm forgetting which movie this is.
This is Ant-Man.
Ant-Man, right. So they could do one of those scenes where you see like Pedro Pascal and all those like characters and like we're about to go on this mission, and then they disappear, and then you skip to the present day, and here they are.
They kind of do that with Captain America too. Like but I guess that's more a part of Captain America's original storyline. So it was already there, but like I need that to see.
Yeah.
You had another necessary requirement. What was it? Just that
that they should Susan and Johnny Storm should actually be siblings. Like that. It just seems weird that they wouldn't be actual siblings. Like I just didn't think in the Fantastic movie that it added anything or tried to make the story richer. It was just kind of like this thing of, Michael B. Jordan's in this. But don't worry, Invisible Woman is still Kate Mara. And it was like, okay, I don't know why that matters. You could have had a Black Invisible Woman, but that's me. I also heard, this is another rumor, Javier Bardem is going to be playing Dr. Doom. I thought that was very interesting.
Ooh, I like.
Yes.
Evil.
I mean, Javier Bardem in anything would be great.
Well, I don't know because he kind of took away from the Little Mermaid for me, but like that's
he's in the Little Mermaid.
Yeah, he's the King Neptune, right? Isn't that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is he?
He's a father.
Oh, I didn't watch it. I'm bad about Disney properties.
I don't know. I had like a lengthy review on it. Takeaway is like I don't know why they did certain things.
Yeah.
I had so many issues with the movie and none of it had to do with Chloe Holly. Like it wasn't her at all. Like I love her. She was awesome. It was basically everything else about this movie was just really bad, including Javier Bardem. Like including him, he was really bad. But I feel like the script was bad, and there was just like a lot of things that I was just like, why? And then he's like obviously very Latino, and he has like every single one of his kids is like a completely different ethnicity. So it was like another one of those like like none of his kids look anything like him. It was very strange.
Interesting. Dan, do you have a fan cast for any of the Fantastic Four members? Like if Pedro Pascal and Javier Bardem are in it, who is another addition that you would like to see?
I do
this is never going to happen, but I would just love to see Chris Evans back as as Human Torch. Yes.
So you want Chris Evans to play Human Torch again?
There'd be some maybe the
Human Torch.
Well, like it's a totally new cast except for Chris Evans, who was Captain America.
No, well, think about it, right? Because like especially if they go the route of the multiverse way of introducing them, like and like spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the end of the Marvels, we get to see Kelsey Grammer's Beast at the end credit scene of the Marvels.
I did see that spoil.
So if they go the route of they're coming from another universe and then all these, all the timelines get collapsed into like the sacred timeline eventually and the multiverse is gone, and that's how the Fantastic Four come into the MCU. I mean, hey, Chris Evans, he's eventually going to probably come back to the MCU, but the big twist would be he's not Captain America anymore. He's playing Human Torch. I think that would be fun. I think the Fantastic Four, the original cast from the early 2000s movies, I think it was cast really, really well, especially I'm forgetting the name of the actor they cast for The Thing, like in the early 2000s, Michael Chiklis, I think.
He was in The Shield.
he was like the perfect fit for that role, I thought. And
Yeah.
so it's difficult. I mean, I think if you go with Pedro Pascal now, then you're gonna have to kind of figure out, like, for chemistry tests, like who the Invisible Woman would be, and it sort of builds out from there. I don't have anybody off the top of my head.
In every iteration, Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman are together, right?
Yes.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, because they get married and they have 2 kids together.
Oh, cute.
Yeah.
And they could probably age them up to already be part of the Young Avengers movie they teased at the end of the Marvel.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
probably.
Because
And
Wiccan
their
and Speed don't
son,
exist. So
yeah, I believe their son Franklin is actually, I know that he has powers, but I believe he's like an Omega level like mutant. So that's another
he's
aspect
kind of like
that they can
Professor
play.
X's son, right? Like, who was like
The Legion guy.
Legion, yeah.
Wow, this all feeds into like a larger storyline. Maybe that's why they've been a little scared to make this movie before this. Like after the 2015 bomb, now they have so much work to do on the writing to make sure all the details line up in order to like have these kids and like feed this like feed back. And
but also like all those movies, like Fox completely, like that's a different studio, and then like when Disney bought them, like there's a whole, like Kevin Feige's like, we're not going to disrupt our current plans for the MCU to ram them in. We're going to bring them in a way that feels natural. And I think because of the pandemic, things have gotten pushed back by a few more years than maybe people would have wanted them to. So regardless of like who they casted with the rest of the Fantastic Four, I think they've got off to a great start, and they will only get better if they get Javier Bardem on board, and then we'll see where they can go from there. But it's a great start to have Pedro Pascal on the team. Potentially, not officially. Yeah, we'll see. But there was like amongst all the other Marvel news, I think the other significant piece of news was that Avengers 4 just lost his director. So we know that Destin Daniel Cretton, who, if I remember correctly, he directed the Shang-Chi movie. And so he was signed on to direct the new Avengers Kang Dynasty movie. And now we know that he's no longer on the project. He's left the project. He is going to be he's still involved with Marvel. So he's going to continue to work on other projects. And I think one of those is like the sequel to Shang-Chi, which I, for one, cannot wait to see. I want to see that new Shang-Chi movie before the next 2 Avengers movies. And he's got a couple of other things, I think, like TV series that he's working on. So Destin Daniel Cretton, great director, going to continue to stay involved with Marvel, working on upcoming projects. But there was another story even earlier in the week where the writer of this new big Marvel book that came out, that was like the official timeline of the MCU, she gave a quote in one of the interviews on a promotional tour for this book. And she, of course, has a lot of good sources right now because she's been talking to Kevin Feige and co. to write that book. She mentioned that Jeff Loveness, who was originally writing Avengers Kang Dynasty, who wrote Ant-Man Quantumania, so he's been heavily involved with the Kang storyline. He like is no longer involved, apparently, according to the writer of this book. That
Let's go.
Has left. He has left the the Kang Dynasty project, and it's because she said not necessarily because he's a terrible writer or anything like that. I think she implied that it was because Marvel is looking to move away from that whole Kang story. So when you look at that story of, okay, the writer is no longer working on the movie, and then you look at Destin Daniel Cretton has left the movie as the director. And then of course, Jonathan Majors, we know he's got a trial date. So we don't know what's going to come of that. So the question becomes, if you add 1, 1, and 1, is Avengers 4 going to be Kang Dynasty anymore? That's my question. Like, Roland, what do you think? Are we moving away from Kang entirely? Especially if you look at how season 2 of Loki ended.
Yeah. I mean, they handled him terribly. Like it's hard to be like, oh yeah, we're gonna really sneak show him, and it's like, no, you have him in like 2 major things, and like it's not that big of a deal. It seems like it's hard to be kind of, I don't know. I think the whole thing with Kang was like the ball was dropped, and they've definitely put themselves in a corner, especially since they were putting all their eggs in a basket with Jonathan Majors, which at the time was an amazing idea. But it would have been interesting to do kind of a Loki dynamic where you see like various different kinds of like variants where you could like keep that going for an extended amount of time and not have to worry too much about contracts and basically the mess that they're in right now. I'm sure that they'll find some way to salvage this idea. I mean, they've been really trying to push the Kang thing. So whether that being recasting or just sticking with Jonathan Majors and trying to find the next best director / writer, I don't know. Who's to say? Angelina, what do you think? What do you think they'll do?
You know, that's so hard, but I just don't see how they can move forward with Jonathan Majors because of all of the accusations. I think, honestly, continuing on with the storyline as they had planned it will face massive repercussions, even if he's not, even if he wins in court. Like, it's still going to have massive repercussions, as so many victims of domestic violence they're going to boycott, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of evidence, there's a lot of like stuff that is obviously piled against him, and there's a reason the DA decided not to drop the case. So I just don't see how they can move forward because there's just no way. So it does make sense that the director has exited on this, and I feel like it has to be just because they're going to pivot and they're going to have to script and they're going to have to change it up, and it does suck because you're right, they really sort of pigeonholed themselves with Loki season 2, and it would have been this great lead up, except I'm sorry, you have this actor, and I think that's the only thing that really sort of like makes me like, I feel like somebody had to have known before this massive court case was filed that there were all of these allegations out there, because they worked on a job together in which she's saying that like all this stuff happened. Like, there had to have been formal complaints already made, stuff like that. So I just have questions as to like why they put all their eggs in a basket of someone who seems to have a really questionable character that could lead to massive allegations in the future. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But like, besides even the actor and the casting itself, just with how they've been dealing with the character and trying to deal with like teasing and a major villain after Thanos, it's just, I don't know. There was always going to be some sort of problem. Mm-hmm. Just the casting and all the accusations going on right now just seems to be the obvious one right now. Yeah. That's just kind of the surface level, I think. I don't know. Dan, what do you think?
I definitely think the director leaving just points to them having to completely like reorganize what this new Avengers movie is going to be about.
They're definitely gonna have to start fresh. Yeah.
I think like a lot of this isn't even got much to do, well, the director leaving the movie and the writer being moved on to maybe other projects. I think this is to do with the fact, like what Roland just said, like they have quite frankly just straight up botched the whole Kang character. Like, if you like get an introduction and then your first order of business is, and I'm sorry, no offense to Ant-Man, but like if you lose to Ant-Man and that's like the introduction, like, can we just like, let me make a comparison here, right? Like, you losing to Ant-Man in your first appearance would be like if they introduced Thanos in the first Thor movie and then he got punched out by Hawkeye. Like, if that happened, then all of a sudden there is no like semblance of legitimacy to the threat that Thanos poses from that point
because he's still a human being. He doesn't have any superpowers. He has a cool suit, but like that's it's hard to be scared of a villain when basically one of the first interactions you have is like, oh no, this guy's butt whooped, dude. Like, yeah, we can get a group of superheroes with actual powers. Yeah, we'll be fine. Don't worry.
Not to mention, before that, season 1 of Loki, like he gets killed by one of the Loki variants, and so like we've already killed 2 versions of Kang by the time we get to like Loki season 2, and we know how if you haven't seen it yet, spoiler alert, but if you did watch Loki season 2, now like the TVA is tasked with hunting down all the Kang variants, and they've already got a couple by the end of the show. So they've basically already almost written the character out. I mean, I don't know how. I mean, there's a football stadium's worth of Kangs out there, so I don't know how easy it is to get all of them. So I'm sure there will be plenty left over, but I just think it's as having a character that you build this sense of dread around, that they did with Thanos for like 6 movies before we got like even the I'll do it myself moment.
Yeah.
Until then, all he was is like a glance here, a little bit of a cameo here and there. I mean, he had a few lines of dialogue in Guardians of the Galaxy, but even then, like he was very much like off to the side. I think they've just overexposed this Kang already way too much and leaned. I think for some reason in my mind, the whole fact that there's an infinite variance of Kang, like just epitomizes the quantity over quality problem Marvel has had since Phase 4 started. And it's just ironic how those two things are like connected. So, yeah. I mean, I personally think this is all basically signaling to us that Kang story probably not gonna happen. They're gonna probably, and there was another story actually that came out just as the week ended, where, and again, this is reportedly from like one of the insiders, so it's not official by any means, that Kevin Feige is now looking to bring in one director to direct Avengers 4 and 5 as like a part 1 and 2, sort of like Infinity War and Endgame War, where the story continues directly from one movie to the next, and they're gonna make it a 2-parter with the same director, kind of like the Russo brothers were for Infinity War and Endgame, which is another reason which leads me to believe maybe we're just going to go straight to Secret Wars and then have like a part 1 and 2.
I was going to ask, are they still going to do Secret Wars? Because then, I mean, that's a total secluded thing. That's like an Elseworld type project that they can just have fun with.
Chris Evans as Human Torch, probably going to be in there.
You and this Chris Evans with the Human Torch thing.
I'm just, well, it's usually Angelina who's making that argument. I'm just, this is the first time I've actually.
I just caught you in this moment. That's all. Yeah.
Like she's already celebrating.
Yeah.
Although, like,
I mean, the Human Torch has to be hot. It's like a requirement.
I mean, his power is literally hot. Yeah.
Exactly.
I was gonna.
It has to be hot. Like that's where all of the girlies come in, and we're like,
yeah.
There has to be swoon worthy.
I will say I will be upset if the Human Torch isn't hot. That's I'm gonna put that another thing on my rules. He's gotta be a little sexy.
Like Chris Evans as the Human Torch was like chef's kiss beautiful. Obviously he's like heartthrob as Captain America, but like he was like the hot douchebag as the Human Torch, which
that's who he is. You know, he's a bit of a player, and that's a character arc for him that you can work with because he's a hothead. You know, that's another thing. That's another aspect.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Nope, his audio's
I just muted myself.
Oh, yeah. I was like, Dan, you're gone.
No, I was gonna say, like putting all the pieces together, I for one am excited to see them pivoting away from Kang because honestly, I didn't think that was going anywhere, and so far, the MCU is feeling rudderless, and I think the latest box office numbers for the Marvels are nothing if not indicative of the fact that the MCU probably needs to pivot a little bit and change direction. So I'm glad that they're finally making the move here, and whether it's Avengers 4's turning into Secret Wars Part 1, or we are getting a Shang-Chi sequel sooner, so that now Destin Daniel Cretton is freed up to do that. And of course, Pedro Pascal as Mr. Fantastic is you know, you can't lose with that. I think he's already America's daddy. He's only going to continue to, you know, really grow into that role a little bit more. And of course the MCU, we're already blessed with America's ass. Now we're gonna have America's daddy. Like, you know, it's just the MCU is America's movie franchise. So we'll see where things go. I'm sure if there's more news about this, we'll be talking about it. But guys, let us know in the comments. What do you think about Pedro Pascal potentially joining the MCU as Mr. Fantastic? Would you want to see Chris Evans back as the Human Torch? Or what are your fan castings for like the Fantastic Four that we haven't, you know, officially heard about yet? And then what are you thinking about Avengers 4 and 5?
We want to hear all the fan casts. I want you
Yes.
guys to just give us a full layout. Let us know what you think, because we all have our sort of envisionment of what the Fantastic Four should be, but we want to know what you guys think. So make sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment those.
The craziest fan cast will be shown on Rolling Underground.
Yes.
I'm gonna put that right here. Yeah.
Yes. Roland will make that happen for you.
I will make that happen. I love crazy fan casts.
All right. So as we do each and every week, we look ahead to the big movie of the following week. So Napoleon is on the horizon. It is the latest adaptation of, the life and times of one and only Napoleon. But this time Apple went to Ridley Scott, said, here, have hundreds of millions of dollars, make this like a historic epic. And it looks like so far, from the trailers at least, that, with somebody like Joaquin Phoenix joining the movie, I mean, that's usually always a vote of confidence. And then with someone like Ridley Scott, who's made some of the best movies of all time, although his recent track record is a little spotty, it seems like this is going to be a good movie. However, the reviews have started to come out, and Angelina, it looked like the reviews aren't very favorable. So are you now hesitant to go see this movie, or what are you expecting from Napoleon?
I mean, you just expect so much, right? Like you have Ridley Scott here, right? Like huge. You have Joaquin Phoenix, who has won so many awards. He's an incredible actor. He's playing a prolific real life character. And we want to see this brought to life. But the critic reviews, I was reading them today just before the show, you guys. Critic reviews are at 66% right now. This movie has a runtime of 2 hours and 38 minutes, so it's a little bit long for a biopic. And the critic reviews are not good. Like one of the worst critic reviews I saw here, it's so sad. It's a film that, for all of its attempts to show us the man behind the military genius, only fully comes alive on the battlefield. Some other people were like, we should just wait to go see it on Apple Plus. Like, really not good. And I was just so excited to see this movie. So now I'm kind of like, I definitely want to see it to see where the critics were very correct, because sometimes critics, as they should be, are very critical to a point that sometimes I feel like the audience score and the critics score don't always match up.
Yeah.
Also, my cat just decided to start going ham on her food over here. So when you hear that crunching in the background, that's her. It's the Animal House over here today. My dog just
I was gonna
hedgehog 5 minutes ago.
Well, you could always bring her on to because you've done that before. It's so cute. I would love to.
Little guest star.
We can hang out together. Talk about Napoleon. But Roland, what are your expectations of
that's so adorable. I love it.
I'm so distracted now.
I think a Napoleon movie, get distracted while I say my piece. I think the Napoleon movie is always going to be a little curse. Stanley Kubrick, if you guys all know, spent years trying to make a Napoleon movie happen. He had shelves and cases of all this research for Napoleon. And it never happened because there was no studio that would want to buy it. So there's always going to be some sort of kind of curse when there's an esteemed director that's trying to make that. And I think it's just going to kind of carry over. But then again, it's probably going to be super long and boring because Kubrick can be like that.
It happens.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think this is going to be a real acting showcase, and I think the biggest thing is probably going to be historical inaccuracies, because if you're getting ratings like that, it's going to be one of the two. It's a performance.
None of the critic reviews have to do with accuracy whatsoever. They just
really
say focuses. No, not a single one of them that I read has anything to do with inaccuracies. They all mention it just shows us one side of his life when he was ruling multiple countries, a huge amount of people, and that was the biggest thing. They were it just seems like a very one-sided story, and it kind of glazes over so much. So
just a slice of life.
Well, to be fair, I don't think you can really, because Napoleon
big ask, right?
He lived a very prolific life, right? There's so much that it's almost for example, we had a we have had so many movies on Princess Diana, like, and the newest one that came out was literally only about one weekend in her life, right? Like, because like, how can you like take the entire lives of like, or even Elvis, the movie Elvis? I'm sure they skipped across a ton of stuff. In Bohemian Rhapsody, like, you know, they showed the important stuff, and they were like, our big finale is going to be that the AIDS concert. Like, that's where we're going to end it. And they spent like probably a good 20-25% of the movie on the concert. But like, you know where your priorities should be. And having said that, though, and without seeing the movie as of yet, I will say like Ridley Scott has had a pretty spotty record recently. I mean, for all of his hits over the years, if you look at the movies he's worked on recently, I think outside of The Martian, I can't really think of any other movie that was like universally applauded for being like one of the best movies of the year. I mean, he's had a lot of divisive, like, you know, movies come out in recent years. So maybe it's just, as a director, he's just past it. I mean, I don't know. I hate to say that about somebody who's probably going to be more successful in their careers than I would ever be, but like, he hasn't really done all that well recently. Like, can you guys point to a movie other than The Martian recently that Ridley Scott directed that you're like, that was a really good movie?
He's been doing a lot of period pieces lately. So that's I think that's kind of
like
it.
House of Gucci.
The House of Gucci I thought was pretty decent.
Yeah.
But Death on the Nile was obviously bogus. And I didn't see
that wasn't Ridley Scott though.
I was gonna say, was that really
that was Kenneth Branagh.
No, I'm looking at his I'm looking at Ridley Scott, like his stuff. Death on the Nile, he was a producer.
Right. Well, I'm talking about as a director
and the producer.
Okay.
And then A Haunting
in Venice. Period pieces.
Okay, so he wasn't director.
Yeah, those are all period pieces.
Yeah.
There's a connection. There's a pattern.
And
period
a lot of
pieces.
his most recent stuff, he's just been a producer and exec producer on stuff.
Yeah.
He hasn't been directing a whole lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, he had a show on HBO Max that I think did really well recently, but it got canceled after a couple of seasons, and I thought it, you know, probably got canceled a little bit too soon. His recent Alien movies were like all seeming like each one, like Prometheus especially, I did not like that one. And now they're rebooting, I think, the franchise, or they're continuing with it, but without Ridley Scott in the director's chair. And, you know, for a director who, like I said, has given us some of the best movies of all time, like the work that he's did. What was the Russell Crowe movie? A Good Year, I think it was called. Yeah, that was a fantastic movie. And like, he's worked with Christian Bale, some of the best actors. He's working, I think now, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't he working on the second Gladiator movie? Like, that's his next project.
Yeah.
So look, with this Napoleon movie, it's a big Apple production. Like, Apple is, you know, entered the arena of movies, and I think they've got some great stuff on the way with Argyle. What was the other recent one that Apple put out that we went to? The Killers of the Flower Moon. You know, I think whereas Killers of the Flower Moon is being looked at as one of the best things Martin Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, Lily Gladstone have ever done in their careers, if not the best thing they've ever done. Napoleon, based on the reviews, it looks like it might be falling short of the mark. But hey, look, Joaquin Phoenix as Joker, Folie à Deux coming out soon, next year, right?
Yeah.
And then Gladiator 2, which, hey, America's Daddy, like, you know, Pedro Pascal, like, he's gonna be a part of that. So
you say it so like straight face that I can't not laugh at.
Yeah. I'm just following up with, like, you know, if it's true, you can't, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it is true.
That's true.
It is true, exactly. I don't want to make it sound like it's not true.
You are America's Daddy. We are here for it.
All right. Well, are you guys gonna go watch Napoleon? Because I mean, how long is this movie? Did you guys look up like runtime on this thing? Because
it's 2 hours and 38 minutes. So it's a little hefty.
Yeah. I mean, also, I've heard some people complain like, oh, like Vanessa Kirby looks way too young to be kind of playing his like love interest in the movie. I was always wondering, like, was this meant to be historically accurate? Like,
I mean, that part never surprises me, because quite literally, like, Marie Antoinette was like 14 when she was promised to her king. Like, we have to think about the fact that during that era, basically everyone who was marriage material of any kind was like under 20 years old. So
women-wise,
you're not wrong.
Yeah, women-wise.
We had a great conversation about that for, was it Killers of the Flower Moon? I think Bridget and you were discussing that in detail. Yeah, go check the review out, guys. I think that was a fantastic review. You guys really went into like a lot of the cultural implications and of course like what the movie talked about. But next week we're going to be talking about Napoleon. I think Bridget's going to be back on the show. We're going to be talking about all the upsides, downsides, like whether it's good or bad or ugly of Napoleon. And I personally thought that Vanessa Kirby's character is one of the better parts of the trailers for the movie. So I'm excited to see, what everybody on screen puts out. It looks epic.
I'm
You could
definitely
tell
excited to see
money went
her
into it.
in another period piece, because she broke out originally on The Crown, and I thought she was one of the best parts of that, the initial like 2 or 3 seasons of The Crown. I haven't gotten to see her in a serious character since, so I'm definitely excited for that. Dan, you are.
I'm muting myself again. Well, I was gonna say, thanks, guys. With that, I think we can probably, call it a show here. It's been a fantastic episode. I'm so happy to see Roland back on here. It's been a long time
Thanks for
since
joining
you were on the show.
Yeah.
I'm definitely gonna be making a graphic with Naylor on there somewhere, and that will be like just for you next time you're on the show. But
my
until
call sign.
Yes, your call sign. Yeah, we got to bring those back. Those were
Yeah.
but yeah, until next time, guys, go out there and watch a fantastic movie, and then come tell us all about it. We'll be talking to you about Napoleon. We might even go check out Wish, the new Disney movie celebrating the 100th anniversary of Disney, and then we'll probably look at all the other Marvel and DC news as well. So until then, go out there and have a great week ahead. We'll see you next time.